Truck driver. Huh? You and your little college princess better watch yourselves out here. The man's voice was low, mocking. Gravel crunched beneath his boots as he stepped closer. But they didn't know. The man behind the wheel of that weathered freightliner wasn't just anyone. He'd been to places they couldn't pronounce, seen things that would crack lesser men in half. And the moment he opened that creaky door and planted his boots on the pavement, the air shifted. Type Dad, if this story reminded you of someone you love who carries silent strength every single day. Howie Keene, 64, leaned back in the cracked leather seat of his 2008 Freightliner, the old rig humming quietly beneath him like a warhorse resting between battles. She was beat up in the way veterans are, scratched, dented, and full of stories, but she never let him down. He reached for the thermos on the dashboard, took a slow sip of lukewarm coffee, and glanced at the fuel gauge. Still half a tank. Good. They were making decent time. Outside, the spring wind rolled through Colville, Nebraska, bringing with it the dry scent of diesel and open fields. They'd pulled into a roadside station on Highway 87. Wayfinder stop, a forgotten speck on the map with one gas pump, 2 vending machines, and a diner that hadn't updated its menu since the early 90s. From the passenger side, the door slammed shut. "I'll grab some water," came the voice of his daughter, Nina. Nina Keene, 23 years old, sharp as a tack, tougher than she looked. Architecture major, top of her class, and still kind enough to spend her spring break riding shotgun with her dad. She weaved between the pumps, her boots clicking against the concrete, long coat flapping behind her in the wind. Howie watched her with quiet pride. She had Camille's eyes, same fire, same sense of direction. And if anyone tried to threaten that fire, they'd find out just how much of it she inherited. Howie's hand rested on the steering wheel, fingers drumming slowly, steady, like the rhythm of marching boots. He kept one eye on the station door Nina had just walked through, the other on the mirror. Situational awareness, they called it. He didn't even think about it anymore. It lived in his bones. Outside, the wind tugged at a tattered American flag tied to a rusted pole near the edge of the lot. It flapped with half its threads torn loose, like a reminder. Not everything broken was useless. Something still stood, just differently. He shifted in his seat, stretching a knee that still barked with pain when the weather turned. The VA called it service-connected wear. Howie just called it what it was, leftover debt from Fallujah. He'd served 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. Got out just shy of his 40th birthday. Back then, the transition from war to pavement felt natural. After all, both required long nights, silence, and the ability to trust no one until you had to. Long-haul trucking wasn't glamorous, but it was clean in its own way. You pick up, you deliver. Point A to point B. No lies, no politics, no body bags. And when Camille got sick, the road became his only anchor. She was 48, strong one day, coughing the next, staged for by the time the doctor spoke clearly, gone within 7 months. Nina had been 16. That year, Howie stopped sleeping in the bed. He stopped fixing the front porch. He sold the house in Boise, packed what he could into a storage unit, and hit the highway full time. He never told Nina the worst part wasn't watching Camille fade. It was how quiet the house became afterward. She never asked, either. Nina always gave him space. Maybe too much. She was strong like her mom. Brilliant. Fiercely loyal. But she never really asked what those patches on his duffel bag meant, or why he sat alone during 4th of July fireworks. She just knew when to hand him coffee, when to fill in the logbook, and when to let him sit in silence. And that silence, it spoke volumes. Howie didn't mind that she didn't know everything. Some stories you only told once. And some you never told at all. The screen door creaked shut behind Nina as she disappeared into the store. Howie exhaled slowly, the thermos warm in his hand. He reached for his logbook, flipping it open on the dash. The pages were neat, always were. Lines drawn, time recorded, mileage tracked. If the Army taught him anything, it was how to live by numbers and keep the mission tight. He jotted a few notes, the pen scratching softly against the page. 10:36 a.m., Fuel stop, Colville. Weather, clear. Wind eastbound. Cargo, 18 pallets medical supplies. Beneath that, he paused, tapped the pen twice on the paper, then wrote two small words without thinking. With Nina, his fingers stopped. He looked toward the glass door. Still inside, probably chatting with the cashier. Nina talked to everyone. That was the part of her that hadn't come from him. She saw people first, not problems. Then the laughter came. Not Nina's. Not the kind that fills the space between songs on the radio. This was a sharp, chest-thumping kind. The kind that came from a pack. Howie turned slightly in his seat, eyes narrowing as he looked toward the edge of the lot. 5 of them. Motorcycles, sleek, polished, loud even at idle. All parked in a crooked line, like they'd claimed the pavement just by being there. The riders dismounted with the swagger of young men who'd never been taught the word consequence. Leather jackets, all patched. Skulls, snakes, flames. One had a mohawk braided down his back. Another wore no shirt beneath his vest. Tattoos stretching across his chest like a battlefield. They were laughing about something. One cracked open an energy drink and chugged it like a dare. Another lobbed the empty can at the trash bin and missed. They congregated near the station door, elbows brushing, shoulders square like wolves at the edge of a clearing, blocking the entrance without saying they were. Howie didn't move. Not yet. He just watched. He knew that look, knew the pack dynamic. The loudest one always acted first. The second laughed hardest. The third recorded. He knew what came next. He just didn't know if they realized who they were about to cross. The bell over the gas station door gave a weak jingle as Nina stepped back outside, 2 bottles of water clutched in one hand, the other adjusting the strap of her backpack. Her boots hit the concrete with that same confident stride her father had watched since she was 12. She scanned the lot, saw the truck, saw him. She smiled, but her path back had changed. The 5 bikers had drifted, subtle as oil on water, until they were stretched across the walkway like a fence made of leather and testosterone. Their conversation dropped in volume, but their eyes locked in. She slowed just slightly, sensing it before anything was said. That sixth sense women learned early, sharpened in parking lots and on empty streets. She weighed her options. Cut behind the ice machine, circle around the pump station, but the moment of hesitation cost her. The largest of them stepped into her line. He was a wall of denim and tattoos, at least 6'3", his neck thick like a tree trunk. A scar curved from his ear to his jaw, and his beard was wild and dark. His patch said Zeke, and the grin spreading across his face was the kind that mistook intimidation for charm. "Well now," he said, voice syrupy and low, "where you headed, sweetheart?" Nina kept moving. Step left, eyes forward. "Excuse me." But Zeke moved too, mirroring her, cutting her off again. "Easy. I'm just being friendly," he said, holding up both hands in mock surrender. Didn't mean to scare the college girl. Behind him, one of the others let out a low whistle. Another pulled out his phone, already angling it for a recording. His screen reflected the sunlight as he hit the red button. "Bet she thinks she's too good to talk to people," one muttered. "You ever see the inside of a truck sleeper, sweetheart?" Another chimed in, laughing. Nina's fingers tightened around the water bottles. Her pulse kicked faster. She shifted her bag on her shoulder and tried again to sidestep, her jaw tight now. But Zeke didn't budge. "Ah, don't be like that," he said, stepping closer, voice hardening beneath the playfulness. Behind her, the station door clicked shut. Across the lot, Howie Keene was already watching, and he'd stopped blinking. From the cab, Howie saw Nina's shoulders tense. Not enough for most to notice, but he did. Her stride faltered, her chin lifted in defiance. That was her mother's chin. He didn't need to hear the words to understand the shape of trouble. The body language said it all. They were circling. Howie closed the logbook, set it gently on the dashboard, and twisted the thermos shut. The truck engine ticked softly as it cooled in the sun. Then he moved. The door groaned on its hinges as it opened, and the step down was slower than it used to be, but surer. His boots hit the pavement with a sound like punctuation, solid, final. A breeze tugged at the hem of his flannel. The sunlight caught the streaks of silver in his beard, the creases around his eyes carved deep by decades of wind, war, and waiting. Howie didn't rush. Rushing was for men trying to prove something. He didn't square his shoulders or puff his chest. He didn't shout. He simply walked, each step deliberate, grounded. Gravel shifted under his soles like it knew to get out of the way. The 5 bikers didn't notice him at first. Too busy laughing. Too busy enjoying the illusion of power. It was the one with the phone who saw him first. His smirk flickered. His recording slowed. Then came the voice of the alpha. Zeke. Well, would you look at that, he said, turning with exaggerated flair. Desert sent us a scarecrow. The others turned, laughter picking back up like it was on cue. Zeke took 2 swaggering steps toward him, arms wide like a showman on stage. Hey, Grandpa, he grinned, flashing yellowing teeth. You forget your oxygen tank. Or are you here to hand out Werther's originals? More laughter, the kind that comes from men who've never been checked. Not properly. Howie didn't respond. He just kept walking until he was between them and Nina. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't square up. He just stood, quiet, calm, immovable. Nina looked up at him, relief flickering behind her fear. Dad. He didn't take his eyes off Zeke. He didn't need to. And in that moment, everything changed. Zeke's smirk wavered. Just for a second. The old man wasn't supposed to look like that. He was supposed to flinch, stammer, plead, maybe raise a shaking hand, or start mumbling something about calling the cops. But Howie Keene just stood there, solid, silent, like he'd stood in places where laughter meant mortar fire wasn't far behind. Zeke cocked his head, trying to reclaim the stage. You got something to say, Pops? Still no answer. Just that look. Not angry. Not afraid. Just centered. Like the eye of a storm. Like a man who'd walked through worse and come out quieter. Zeke stepped closer, his breath thick with stale beer and bravado. You trying to be a hero? He growled, low enough that only Howie and Nina could hear. That's when Howie moved, but not toward him. He calmly reached up and unbuttoned the top of his flannel shirt. One button, then another. Then he slid it off, folded it once, and handed it to Nina without breaking eye contact. She took it in silence, her hands trembling just slightly. Underneath, he wore a worn gray t-shirt, faded, stretched thin from years of wash and wear. But the letters still showed. U.S. Army Rangers. Faint, but clear. Beneath that, one scar ran down his arm like lightning had touched him once and never let go. Another, circular, pitted, told the story of a bullet long since removed but never forgotten. The laughter stopped. It didn't pause. It died. One of the bikers, barely more than a kid, really, took a step back and whispered something. The word Ranger hung in the air like gun smoke. Zeke's bravado cracked. Not much, but just enough. He blinked, cleared his throat. Nice shirt, he muttered. Pick it up at a thrift store? Howie didn't answer. He didn't need to. His posture said more than any story ever could. Shoulders squared but relaxed. Feet planted. That quiet readiness of a man who's seen the worst of the world and decided to keep standing anyway. It wasn't the body of a victim. It was the stance of a protector. Zeke's voice had lost its bite now, his insults thinning like steam. And for the first time since they arrived, none of them were laughing. The silence that followed stretched across the parking lot like a drawn breath. No one moved. Even the gas station air seemed to still. Just the fluttering of the torn flag and the low tick of an idling engine nearby. Howie didn't flinch. He didn't shift his weight. His eyes never left Zeke's. Not in a challenge. In a warning. In a way only men who've walked away from death know how to look. Calm, steady, final. Zeke took a half step back. Barely noticeable. But his friend saw it. That split-second stutter. That dip in his shoulders. It spread like a ripple in water. The one with the phone slowly lowered it. No more filming. No more jokes. Zeke's lips curled into something halfway between a smirk and a retreat. Come on, boys, he muttered, voice brittle. We're burning daylight. He turned, tossing his head like he was still in charge, but no one followed right away. The youngest biker hesitated, eyes lingering on Howie's scars, on the quiet weight of him. One of them muttered, "Let's go," and the spell broke. They moved back toward their bikes without another word. No more insults, no more swagger, just footsteps on concrete, and the awkward shuffling of pride being packed away in silence. Zeke was the last to look back, over his shoulder, face flushed, try to recover whatever dignity was left in the dust behind him. Howie didn't move until the last boot left the curb. Only then did he shift, gently placing a hand on Nina's back, guiding her back toward the truck. No rush, no panic, just quiet purpose. She walked beside him, the rolled-up flannel still clutched in her arms like a shield she didn't know she needed. Her heart was still racing, but her head was high. "You okay?" he asked quietly, eyes scanning the lot one last time. She nodded. "Yeah." Her voice was tight but steady. I didn't expect." "I know," he said. "They never do." As they climbed into the cab, Nina paused, looked at him differently now, not just with gratitude, but with awe. Howie shut the door behind them, turned the key, and just like that, the engine rumbled to life. No fists thrown, no guns drawn, just one man standing tall, and 5 who now knew better. The Freightliner pulled out slow, its shadow stretching long across the cracked pavement as it rolled past the pumps and back toward the open road. Howie didn't glance in the mirrors. Didn't need to. Nina sat quietly in the passenger seat, the rolled-up flannel still resting on her lap, like a question left unanswered. The weight of the moment hung between them, not heavy, just present, real. For a long stretch, neither said a word. The hum of the road filled the silence. Tires met asphalt, lines blurred beneath them. The truck cabin became a moving sanctuary, carrying 2 hearts that had seen more in 10 minutes than most do in 10 years. Then finally, softly, Nina spoke. "Did you think they'd really do something?" Howie didn't look at her right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the road, hands steady on the wheel. His voice was low, unshaken. "Doesn't matter what they thought," he said. "Only matters what they learned." The answer sat in the air between them like scripture, simple, unshakable, earned. Nina turned toward the window, watching the sun climb higher above Nebraska plains. Her fingers traced absent-minded patterns on the bottle of water in her lap. She didn't say anything right away, but in the way her shoulders relaxed, in the way her breathing steadied, it was clear something had shifted inside her. She'd always known her dad was strong. The kind of strong that fixes engines in the snow, that lifts couches without help, that remembers her birthdays even when he's 1,000 miles from home. But this, what she saw back there, was something else. A different kind of strength. Quiet, unbending. The kind that doesn't need to throw a punch to make a point. She looked over at him. Really looked. And she saw not just a man who raised her, but the man who endured things he never spoke of. The protector who stood between chaos and calm, without needing to be thanked. She smiled, small and genuine. And for the first time, she realized, some heroes don't wear capes. And some don't even raise their voices. They just stand. And that's enough.